forces, and that influence building is also part of peacekeeping.
There's so many things I want to talk to you about,
Yeah,
so I'm going to try to run through some of these topics.
Sure.
You've mentioned a lot about China. They had their vice premier in today. I think President Trump met with them this afternoon about the trade deal, their suggestions now that they've committed to buying $1.2 trillion in American goods. Do you have any inside info on how these trade talks are going, or where they're at?
I'm watching it closely, mostly with, of course, publicized accounts of it. Talk occasionally, however, of course, to people that are involved. What I see happening is maybe we're not there on March 1st, but the progress is such that there's no reason we shouldn't continue the talks.
He's supposed to meet with President Xi in Mar-a-Lago at the end of March.
Yep.
So is that a good sign in your opinion?
I think it's a very good sign. I think, how can you argue with meeting with the leader of another country, particularly an adversary? I think, to President Trump's credit, he has brought him to the table. He's forced him to the table. And while it's been painful in the short run for a lot of American industry, including agriculture, Donald Trump cleaned up the mess created by decades of looking the other way.
Oh, I got to ask you about this. I've got this letter in my hand that you sent to DHS Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen. Yeah. Not considered a love letter for the United States Army Corps of Engineers. What was your message to the Corps in this letter?
Well, my message isn't even to the Corps. It's to the Secretary who's responsible.
What's the message, though? I mean, you're saying, hey, the Corps is like, I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Here's what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that if you look at how the Corps has handled their oversight of existing dollars that we as Congress have allocated for wall building or barrier building, we're not seeing a lot of progress. And now we just appropriated another $1.4 billion, and we see this crisis, this humanitarian crisis. We see drugs coming across the border. We see caravans coming. We see, human trafficking. We don't have time for the bureaucracy of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to manage a process while we wait, and I'm just urging.
A couple things in this, because President Trump now twice has retweeted the same tweet with an Army Corps of Engineer video saying, hey, we're 47 days ahead of schedule. So are you right, or is President Trump right?
Well, I think when you look at the statistics and you see how many miles have been built of new barrier, you're not seeing a real fast project in my view.
But then why would he tweet that out and go, hey, we're 47 days?
You'd have to ask him. I don't know.
All right.
But I'm concerned. Let's face it, North Dakotans have a lot of experience watching the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers oversee private sector infrastructure and slow it up. So, I'd rather see a vertically integrated company that knows how to not only plan and manage, but build.
I've heard you mention this even a couple times today. Do you think that there are lifelong bureaucrats in the Corps that are never Trumpers, don't like Trump, and that's part of the delay?
So I want to avoid that characterization because I don't know that that's it. But what I do know about the bureaucracy, setting deep state aside for a minute, is that it's risk averse, that it's slow, that it requires background check, CYA, and that's what I think is the big problem.
Are you concerned about the message that you're sending to the Corps that it could impact the FM diversion project in any way, shape, or form?
You mean the one that they're going to build? I don't. No, I don't. Because what the Corps needs to be is accountable. And my experience with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, I think North Dakota's experience largely with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is they're not very accountable. That they are misplaced, in my view, in the Army to begin with. I know that there are military projects that they work on, but I think that I just like to see them act a little.
So obviously, you're talking to the Corps about this wall. President Trump has now declared this national emergency. Do you blame Paul Ryan for the reason to have to declare this national emergency? I mean, you guys both had the House, the Senate, and the presidency. Why not get it done? What is he at fault for this?
No, I don't think he's at fault at all. I mean, we've had lots more money than this that we were able to bring to the forefront in the House when we had the House. But in those days, of course, a lot of times the problem was not getting 60 senators on things, or taking bigger bites that didn't seem very manageable. Now, I still, Chris, firmly believe that we need a comprehensive plan for immigration. To the degree that a wall could be part of it, that'd be fine with me, especially if it brings more votes, then we ought to do that. But right now we have this one issue of recommended, by the way, by the boots on the ground, the Customs and Border Protection. I've talked to enough of them to know they want wall funding. They want this barrier built. It helps make all of their other resources work more efficiently and more productively.
So as you know, you said in a recent interview that, hey, I'm not so sure that this national emergency is going to hold up in courts or whatnot. There's going to be a joint resolution of refusal coming over to the Senate in the next 18 days, roughly.
Yeah.
Are you going to vote to refuse these kind of powers, continuing going to the executive office? You're going to vote for this and say, I'm fine with the executive office having more power.
Well, the vote isn't whether the executive office should have more power. It's on the policy that's at hand. Because you're going to get a lot of people that say it's executive power, except that I get to vote on it. So in other words, the check and balance of a legislative branch and a judicial branch are in play here. The president declares the emergency. He identifies the dollars he wants.
But then why do you doubt that the courts would hold it up? If you think he's acting within his own powers, and why?
Well, because we know that we have a lot of activist courts out there. And I think the president himself, in his very flamboyant way, outlined exactly how he thinks this is going to play out with a district court in the Ninth Circuit, and then the appellate court, and then the Supreme Court. And I think he's very confident in the Supreme Court, and I'm not even that, I might not even share that level. I mean, it's likely, but I wouldn't say it's a certainty by any stretch. That's why I want to see a more urgent message delivered to the Secretary of Homeland Security. I don't want to wait for the Supreme Court to decide he can spend that money. And frankly, Chris, I think there are plenty of dollars already available within his power that include the $1.4 billion. Hey, let's get about the $1.3 billion. How about we just start building with the $1.4 billion tomorrow, and use somebody that can do it quickly. And then the drug interdiction money, I think, is tailor-made. That he doesn't need an emergency for that. I think the $600 million, and it may be more, who knows, in forfeited dollars, it makes all the sense in the world. So that's aside even from the declaration. Let's do that. And by the way, we're starting now on the new appropriations process. So whether or not he gets the emergency declaration is almost secondary in my view to let's do with what we know we have.
So just for clarity, when this joint resolution of refusal comes to the Senate floor, how are you going to vote?
I want to see it, but I'm likely to vote against the disapproval because I approve. Because I approve of his plan.
Thank you so much to Senator Cramer. And oh yeah, by the way, you get to see kind of part of an Office episode in that interview as well.